Hello YouTube, and especially all you shirt heat pressers out there, or I guess craft lovers in general. A couple of videos ago, I posted about a laser alignment system that I kind of came up with based on some tools that a lot of other heat pressers are using out there. And basically what that is a $6 Harbor Freight laser system, which they sell to align saw blades with cut lines and things like that. But they're so easy to find, they're so inexpensive, and they come with a magnetic base, which makes them insanely versatile. It's kind of ridiculous not to have something like that at your disposal, especially if you're new to heat transfers. Eyeballing it may take some time to grow into, or if you're someone who really wants consistency across output, then that's probably something you've considered before. Unfortunately, the Hotronix system is well over $300. I think it's $350 and maybe $300, but I think it's $350. And that's basically a 4-laser alignment system, which gives you, different laser heads that you can manipulate to give you multiple horizontal or vertical alignment guides. And it's an awesome product and very helpful, but out of the scope of most people's budget. At least it was out of mine as a beginner. So in my previous video, I talked about a sub $50 setup, and I list the pros and cons between that system and what Hotronix offers. This is what I'm calling version 2.0. This is not something to do in addition to that other setup, but this is a little bit more refined, more precise, sturdier, and it's going to run you about $25 more than the previous video, assuming that you already have a USB power bank block at your disposal. They're so ubiquitous. So many of us have them for traveling. Some of us, just keep them on our person in a laptop bag or in a car most of the time. In fact, I've got a little one here to show you what I'm talking about. This is a very basic single output PNY battery block, which you can use. I have a bigger bank, but assuming that you have something like this at your disposal, this is a $25 alternative, $26 alternative to what I showed you in video 1, and there's some pros and cons to it. So I'm going to introduce you to the system now, and then I'll break it down and show you how I assembled it. Now, in the last video, you'll know that I posted a link to a free download, if you find it helpful, of a 15 by 15 platen size laser alignment guide with direct center and then 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines for various placements. I've since upgraded that download and now has 3, so there's kind of an intermittent one. So from collar down, you have 3, 3.5, and 4 inches. And for left chest pocket, you have 4, 4.5, and 5-inch intervals. Again, if you like that idea, you think it would be helpful and you can get it printed on a large enough sheet of paper, I'll go ahead and link it in the video here too. But if you watched the previous video and you did download it, check for the upgraded now, because you may find these middle alignment systems helpful. So basically all this does is give you some sort of a guide to have your laser alignment system run on. And before, with the Harbor Freight lasers, you would press the little button in the back of the system or back of the unit and then rotate it in various angles to align the laser with one of the grid points. Very straightforward. This is based on the same principle but slightly different. And what I've done is I've wired 4 laser heads over 2 USB ports into a battery bank, which I have laid around. I actually have about 4 of these. And now when I press the power button, I get 4 laser alignment guides. And so the system is very much the same as last time, but with slightly more stability up here. And I'll tell you why I went this way and the pros and cons. So if you didn't watch the other video, or you haven't yet, this system back here that's holding it is a dual computer monitor arm. Basically, it's clamped to the table. It's very stable. When I bump the table, it bumps the whole system, so this doesn't swing freely. And then on the mounting plate, I secure my laser fixtures. Now, in the previous video, I talked about ease of use of the laser systems. Because they're magnetic, you can just stick them on there and you can spin the base because it's just magnetic and rotate the head. One of the cons that I found was that depending on quality control between units, sometimes the lasers weren't very fine, which isn't a big deal because they are just kind of a guide. You can still line it to the very top of the beam. There was some prism leakage. There was some that kind of, they just weren't really refined, and there was no way to focus the beam. You can rotate the beam, but you couldn't focus how sharp the beam was. These allow for that. The other difference is because the other units are also battery powered but independently, when you turn them on, they stay on. As you can see, this system has already gone off, and that's because most of the battery banks that you can get out there have a minimum power threshold where if it doesn't detect more than a certain amperage or voltage or something being withdrawn, then it'll only stay on for maybe 20, 30 seconds, 1 minute, then it'll shut off. This is a 3-port USB port, and the one farthest to the outside does stay on a lot longer, but they all shut off automatically eventually, versus plugging in something like a cell phone, which is going to constantly draw enough power to allow the device to stay on. These lasers won't do that. So one of the downsides is you have to reach way over here and press the button again, which isn't a huge deal, but it is something to keep in mind comparing the two systems. But I'm going to bring you up here closer in now and show you exactly how I've set this up and what components you'll need. So I'll start with the breakdown of an idea of how to assemble one of these heads, and then I'll show you what the 4-head array basically looks like. Okay, so I failed to mention one thing in the intro that may affect the overall price for people, and I did mention it's helpful or within the cost range that I'm projecting if you have a power bank laying around, but it's also helpful if you have old USB cables laying around, particularly the ones that are USB to USB mini. The mini USB is just not very used anymore. A lot of the devices that come out now use the micro USB or some other variation, USB-C, something like that. So I had, honestly, when I went through one of my old electronics boxes, I had 9 USB mini cables laying around, and I'm using a white one here, for example, because I've already started the cutting process on another one, and you'll get an idea for that moving along. So here's what you're going to need to build one laser with a tweak, and I'll explain to you what that is in a minute. So the first thing you're going to pick up are the actual lasers themselves, and I've got these linked below, and they come in 3 styles. Laser beam, kind of like a laser pointer, horizontal line, which is 1 straight line, and then cross type, which gives you 2, and I'll demonstrate one of those in a minute. They come in packs of 3, and they're about $8.50 on Amazon, and you just pick the style you want. I highly recommend horizontal. Again, a little bit more on that in a second, and you'll get 3. So included in the cost projection, though, is if you want a 4th one, buying 2 of these. So with that, you would be able to make 4 individualized beams. This is, again, to compare to what Hotronix offers and what I kind of prefer. And it gives you 2 backups should something ever happen to one of your lasers. So you'll definitely need this. The other thing that you're going to need is, again, like I mentioned, USB cable, because we're going to splice into this one, power bank, and then your hardware. Now, there's a couple ways to go about this, and the second one is definitely the one I'm going to prefer or recommend to you. So with this right here, this is a PVC pipe, 1/2-inch PVC pipe, and all I did was cut this down, and then I glued a 1/4 threaded nut on this side, a smaller nut on this side with a thumb tab screw for tightening, and basically you run the laser through the opening, tighten this down on the beam itself, depressing against the wall so the laser doesn't shift in and out, and then screw this onto your mounting system. At the end of the day, this is a cheaper way to go about it, but it's only going to wind up being about $10 cheaper than going with the steel version, and I highly recommend this. So this is an example. If you really want to do a lot of DIY to this, feel free to go this route. I did it. Over time, I don't think it's going to be nearly as stable, and I don't know, it's just not as cool, so I'm going to get rid of that. So basically, this is a 1/2-inch collar, and if you are familiar with power tools or anything like that at all, a lot of times they sell these in multi-level packs that allow you to put this up over a drill bit, tighten this nut down, and that's a depth gauge so that your drill press can't go any further down. This will actually stop against whatever the drill surface is so that you can get absolutely consistent drill hole depths in your project. Well, I found a guy on Amazon that sells these in 1 solid size, and you're going to need a 1/2 inch, and a 10 pack of these is a little over 15 bucks. Again, this is linked in the description below. But basically all this is a solid piece of steel that's got a 1/2 inch bore out in the middle. And then it's got an Allen wrench tightening screw right here, again, for a drill press or anything like that. The beautiful thing about this is it's a win-win. First of all, the bore out is large enough for the laser module to fit through at 12 millimeters. And this happens to be a standard 1/4-20 threaded hole right here. So if you take the included screw out, you have a standard 1/4-20 opening, which is super helpful. Now we'll go on to the mounting system. Now, if you are a photographer, you've done any YouTube videos or anything, you may have these multi-arms at your disposal. I had a couple. That's how I tried this setup out to see which way I preferred it. But these are useful for other projects. So when I decided what I wanted to go with, I did purchase a 4-pack of those. They're linked in the description below, and I'm going to show you close up on the rig here in a minute. But this is the same idea. And basically all this is 2 ball bearing points in here that are clamped together by this clamp right here. So that gives you 360-degree basic motion on both ends of the system. More importantly, it's got quarter-threaded mounts on both ends, and this one came with 2, but the ones I'm going to show you come with 1, come with a rubber gasketed kind of a brace clamp. So if you were to tighten like an LCD monitor for video production or something like that, it has something soft and grippy to rest against. And that's going to actually be your security for the dual monitor plate that's up there. And again, I'll show you that in a second. So I'm going to basically do a demonstration of how you assemble these. It takes only a couple of seconds once you've built your laser system. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, lost my 1/4-20 thread there, get that out of the way because we won't need it, is you want to start with your USB cable. Now there's a lot of videos like this on YouTube. I'm going to show you a visual breakdown, and I'll link to another video that shows you exactly what to do in a minute. You're going to take some wire cutters or some needle nose pliers that have wire cutters and cut the small end off. Inside you're going to find 4 wires and some sort of metallic sheathing probably. You want to cut all that back, cut the green and the white wire away, leaving you just the black and red wires. That's all you're going to need for this, okay? So this is, again, an intermediate stage, just USB cable with the mini end cut off. Then what you're going to want to do is trim some of the wiring off on the laser, twist together the red to red and black to black, and then you can solder that. You can heat secure it with heat shrink tubing. You can just use electrical tape, whatever you feel like doing. I've actually soldered my permanent ones and then tape the rest of it up and you're good to go. What I've actually done in testing, I haven't experienced any overheating or anything like that, but because my battery pack only has 3 USB outlets and I wanted 4 lasers, I've paired them up. So each one of my USB cables is running on 2 lasers. Again, so that's going to be the black from both lasers tied onto the black here, and the red from both lasers tied onto here, secured however you feel confident doing that, taping it up for more security and so that these don't run together, and you're good to go. Now, I'm not an electrician, but you're dealing with such low voltage here. You're talking like 5 volts or something like that. You're really not in danger of causing a problem, but I don't want to be blamed for any battery pack overheating or laser head overheating. So obviously, consult your own intellect, other videos out there, and if you feel safe moving forward with it, then go for it. So that's all you're going to do. Again, securing 2 of these, giving yourself enough slack. They're not going to be more than 4 inches apart, at least on this particular setup. Red to red, black to black, tie them off, secure all of this up, and then you'll have 2 heads on 1 USB. And that is going to look something like this. Now this is a test rig that I made earlier. It only has 1 laser on it. It's actually the cross type, and I'll discuss that in a second. But this is basically what it looks like. And when you're done, all you're gonna do is plug this into your battery pack and your laser will come on. Now, my thoughts on the cross type were, if I could get this and then just push it up the platen, I would only need 2. Think about it. If you had a cross type and a cross type, one here and one over here, you would actually only need 2 lasers to go about it. And that is true. However, these need to be perfectly perpendicular to the center of your platen in your shirt alignment guide to work. Because as you start to get off, you can kind of see it, I think, in this. they kind of scissor. And that's because the plane that they're projecting against, if I project it straight down, it's perfect, but as I lean it, it starts to bow. And that's because the beam, see that one looks more like a pair of chopsticks or something. The beam is projecting farther along than the top. It's not equal. So you can do it and just slide it up, but one of the two axes has to be perfectly perpendicular to the alignment system you're working with. So I don't recommend this. These are way, way, way more tedious to get aligned. They do work if you only want to do two. I would just recommend running splitters on these and you're good to go. This battery pack's actually lasting quite a long time, so this may not have a minimum battery threshold, but the other pack that I have does. So that's what you're going to do. So I'm going to unplug this real quick and show you how to secure it. When you get these, you're going to unscrew, if you get the ones that I've linked in the description below, you're going to unscrew the security thread here and use it for the mounting. It's also going to give you a longer threaded end on the arm systems that are created by Small Rig. The reason I'm recommending them is you get a 4-pack for about the same price as just one of these. Now you can use many ball heads like you would use on a tripod as long as the base rotates. My previous video I talked about you need to have 3 axes that you can rotate to line these up perfectly. But I don't recommend those because they're a little bit more cumbersome to fiddle with because the bottom's constantly moving. They're harder to hold in place in my experience. And you're going to need to buy the threads separately, but having looked at all the variations, because you're going to get a retention thread with these, and these give you the ability to change your height and depth because you have a lot of swing radius, I just feel like you're getting the most bang for your buck with this style. So you're going to start to take the board, I'm going to just call it a metal washer here, and thread it onto the end, one of the ends of the, I think this is the end I was using here. And you're going to want to spin it on there until it comes right to the edge. This one's a little bit tighter than the other ones were, but it's still going on. You're going to want to thread it until it gets to, there it goes, it probably just had some debris. Right and when it starts to show on the inside, whoops, sorry. Right when it starts to show on the inside there. There's not a lot of clearance, so you want that just coming up. And then you want to run the laser, see it's not quite, there we go, just like that. And then once you have the laser in place, you just want to turn the base just enough to where that tightens down. And now it's not going anywhere. And then once you mount this to the plate, which you're going to pass this through the back of the plate and then use this just like a washer, or sorry, just like a threaded nut, and you're going to tighten this down against the back of the plate, and that's going to give your mount. And then you just unscrew this and manipulate the head to align it wherever you want it to go. All right, guys, we're on the back side of the mounting plate now. The lasers are on this side. As you can see, the 4 arms are out. These dual sets of wires are 2 lasers sharing the single USB right here. Now on the back of the mounting plates, because monitors have varying sizes, you have 2 mounting holes in all 4 corners. And I've just used the outermost hole because it gives me the most working room on the front end. And basically what I've done is I've taken the laser mount right here and I've run it through the back, and then I've taken that included threaded washer, the included threaded grip, and I've spun it to the back. And what I actually did was I held this in place and locked the front down, locked the ball arm down, and twisted it where it got really tight to give it a little bit less wiggle, and then loosen it up and remanipulated the head. And these are really secure now. They don't come loose. They don't spin. The magnetic versions that Harbor Freight offers are super easy. Just throw them up there, but if you bump the table, even though the arm's pretty secure, the weight can sling them, and just like a refrigerator magnet, it can slide down with the momentum. This is a lot more secure. The beams also have a rotating front element here, which I hope you can see. I don't know if it's going to come into focus. I'm focusing back here. Has a rotating front element, which does allow you to focus the beam. And because you can focus the beam, my recommendation is to get the base secure, then run the laser through the head. All right, hopefully this is at a good enough angle for you to see. When I press the button and turn it on, if I have the laser head free, you can see it rotating down there, okay? And as I rotate the front of this element, you'll see the beam rotate, but as the beam rotates, it gets thicker. So you should be able to see that this beam is about 3 or 4 times as thick as this beam. And that's because for this distance, this beam is not currently focused. If I have it already tightened down in this, it's a lot harder because you wind up going in a circle. So what I would do is hold this, rotate the beam. That's getting worse. Oop, see, goes off one of the downsides. Rotate it back around so I get the finest, sharpest beam possible. And then go ahead and rotate the beam to where it's going to be and then pass it through the head. And then holding it in place, rotating the head to where it gets tight like that. And now that this has been tightened down against the laser head, that's how we wind up doing it. Loosen it and then bring the head back around. Now that it's more nimble, you won't have to worry about as much play. And then just get the beam along the line you want it to and tighten it back down. May take some finite, because if you've done this before, as you tighten it can overcompensate, and there you go, you're good. So the reason I recommend doing that, having tried this many times myself, is you may have it all lined up in here, and then to focus the beam, you wind up to get this perfect placement without the cord all tangled up, you get a really thick line. So focus the beam loosely from the position where it's going to be, then pass it back through, lock this down, rotate the head to tighten it, loosen it, and bring it back around. That's going to allow you to rotate it tight on this axis where the thread is, and then manipulate it back to where it needs along the ball head right here. And again, these are small rig ball joints. They're the same as in the example I showed you earlier, except they're a lot smaller and just a little bit finer. And they give plenty orientation options for this type of setup. Once you've done this, I've got my 2 on my top running off one beam, 1 horizontal and 1 vertical, and 2 on the bottom run horizontal and 1 vertical. And when I press the little button on my battery pack down here, the lasers come on. And if I move the table, whoop, the arm came down because it wasn't pinned, it wasn't locked. But the beams themselves don't move because with the configuration that I've used here, the beams are actually locked to the table. So it's not hard to knock them over. I still have arm working room here. I'm still using battery power, and this type of battery bank lasts forever. The charge lasts forever as far as using lasers. And then if I need to take this and go do something else, like take it to work or something like that, I can just unplug them and head out the door. This is also helpful if I want to unplug one. You can see here, this particular arrangement is set at 4.5 inches horizontal and 5 inches down from the collar. And the other one is set up the opposite of that and go this way. This one's dead center with a top. So if I was just doing a center chest alignment, this is perfect for that. But by combining 2 of them, I get all 4 of them at one time. And then this will power off by itself, as you've seen repeatedly, after a handful of seconds. So if you are doing a lot, you might just need to tap that button in between, or you may get a battery pack that doesn't have a minimum threshold. And if you press the button and something's plugged in, it just sends juice. So you'll be good to go with that. All right, guys, that's going to conclude this version 2.0 hack or tutorial, however you want to refer to it, how to set up a laser alignment system for your heat press needs. The Harbor Freight version, which I showed in the previous video, is awesome. It's convenient. You just run down, grab 4 or however many of the lasers you want and throw them up against your metal plate and you're good to go. However, you can't focus those. There's a lot to be desired in quality control and brightness in line focus and that sort of thing. And they can slip on you much easier than this system. These beams are more refined, they're a little bit brighter, and they're way more stable in the plate than the Harbor Freight version. And considering the fact that the mount is going to be the same, if you do have USB cable and you do have a battery bank of some sort that will work for this configuration, for the $26 price difference and having 2 extra laser heads, I highly recommend this configuration. Again, it takes a little bit more time, a little bit more patience, because you are going to have to splice some cable, some wire, thread those, get them twisted together, and all of the things that I discussed earlier. But the extra, 10, 20 minutes that you may put into a project, or even if it's an extra hour, are going to pay off in the end, because you're going to have a more refined, excuse me, more stable system. The only disadvantages that I found to this system so far are the fact that my power block that I had, and I actually have 3 or 4, and I tried all of them. They all have an auto shut off, because the beams, even 2 of them running on a single USB and 2 USB ports being consumed, do not keep the power bank turned on for the entire time. So I actually did this the other night. I can actually press about 2 shirts. If these shut off, I just press the button on top and it starts back up. That's really the only con, other than it's like $25, $26 more to do it this way. And if you're ordering from Amazon versus having Harbor Freight in town, you are just gonna have to wait for that Prime delivery. So all things being equal, guys, I think the version 2.0 hack is more refined and more useful over the long haul. But for simplicity purposes, the Harbor Freight hack is probably the way to go. Either way, I haven't tried the Hotronix, so I can't speak to how great or how flawed that system is. But for the price and what I've seen online, and for what it's designed to do, I really cannot justify the $300 to $350 expense to get that specific unit versus building my own like this. And I just think this is a better way to go. So I hope you guys are having a lot of fun running your businesses or doing your crafts or whatever it is that brings you joy, and that this hack may be beneficial to you. Or maybe you saw lasers and you're kind of a nerd like me and love to look at that kind of stuff from time to time when you're bored. Maybe this was insightful to you in some sort of way, or a cure for a handful of minutes. Either way, guys, I hope that it sparks creativity in your life, and I hope that you're enjoying everything that you're doing on your end. Till the next video, be safe and God bless.